To say that Batman Year One is before my time is, well, a bit of an understatement. In my entire life, the list of comics that I've read is exactly 0.0. Expanded to graphic novels and manga, and I've done some here and there, and while I have seen about half of the Batman movies, I really know almost nothing beyond the aspects of the character that have leaked into the cultural zeitgeist. And then I saw this great video about DC's heroes, and I wanted to change that. I wanted to see what all this fuss is about. So I went to Reddit and I searched where's the best place to start. And there's not really a consensus that I found, but I feel like here really is as good a place as any. Now, this comic was published in the year 1987, which was before my mom published me. So while I do want to consider this as a comic from a different era, I mainly want to bring the perspective of how it holds up for a modern audience. Like, for me, right, its competition is not Marvel, manga, or even just other comics. It's TikTok, Instagram, and just life in 2025. Also, a quick note aside from the usual like and subscribe nonsense, you can actually find Batman Year One completely free on Hoopla, which is how I read it. It works with most US library cards. Libraries for the win. Now let's dive into Batman Year One by Frank Miller. First things first, this art, oh my god. Batman obviously is artistically iconic, but David Mazzuchelli, I really feel like takes it a step further and uses it to show and not tell, which, to be honest, was one of my main worries about going into this. I mean, just single panes will give you such a genuine understanding of this world. And speaking of world, I was really surprised to see how much time is just spent on building this Gotham, which I think by all accounts is the definitive interpretation of the city. And our main vessel to get to know this world is James Gordon, who kind of serves as our fish out of water, having just been transferred to Gotham PD. The beginning of the comic follows a pretty consistent cycle of showing us Gordon's experiences and then Bruce Wayne's. I really like how Miller uses these different texts to clearly spell out who the narrator is. But he could not anticipate the brain rot of my education because I just cannot read Bruce Wayne's narration very well. So we get some more story conveying to us that Gotham is bad, like really bad. And this is necessary because Miller is going to great lengths to try and sell a millionaire dressing up and fighting crime. And oh man, 25-year-olds in 1987 looked a lot older. But moral of the story, this is a city rotten to its absolute core, from its law enforcement to its citizens to its politicians. It is broken. So after Gordon learns what a shitty place Gotham is, we go back to Bruce to show that he's already been thinking of being a vigilante, which really brings me to my first and biggest complaint. This story is way too short. Now, the TLDR of Batman Year One is that it was a part of a suite of issues after DC effectively nuked their continuity. So essentially, they could start back fresh. Superman and Wonder Woman got these big, revamped origin stories, but apparently Batman's was left pretty untouched to the original. Now, initially, this was conceived as a full-fledged graphic novel, which, if you ask me, it really should have been. The pacing here is just so insanely quick that characters will have their entire essence explained in a single page, and we just gotta move on because so much content is crammed into these issues. You know, we get all this stuff that happened before the book about Batman's training and Harvey Denkins introduced, but his character serves no purpose in the story. It's just a lot to put in. I want to touch on this more later, but when I was told it was 4 issues long, that really meant nothing to me because I didn't know how long an issue is. I'd say in total the story took me maybe 40 minutes to read, and just trimming down some of the content I think would have serviced for a much better narrative. Anyways, after Harvey gets beat up by some crooked cops, Bruce dips his toes into violence and vigilantism, but this is pre-suit and pre-identity. Not only is this great for giving a sense of progression as to what Bruce might be lacking, but it also sets up Selina's character as sympathetic, but also willing to compromise her morals. Sort of an anti-hero. And while I wish they gave her a little more time, I do feel like the story finally explained to me why Catwoman is a great character, and really an important foil to Bruce. So much of Batman media either completely eschews her heroic traits or just boils her down to a femme fatale. So the cops come and interrupt this great character moment here and actually shoot and arrest Bruce, which has already really thrown me for more of a loop than I had expected. You see, I was definitely worried, given how iconic this story is, that it would be too similar to movies like Batman Begins to fully be engrossed by it. But while I know the general ending, I know Batman's not gonna die, I genuinely really could not predict where it was going. So especially considering the length, I was very pleasantly surprised. Bruce escapes because, of course he does, but the way it mirrors Gordon's journey, along with some excellent art, just rhymes so satisfyingly.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And as we close up the first issue, we get one of the coolest moments in the whole story. Bruce realizing who he needs to become. But if I can give a zoomer take, first of all, I get the metaphor of Zorro, it's very smart, blah blah blah, but I really thought having the show he watched be of bats is a much better decision, because having his identity revolve around conquering the fear of his parents' demise and then instilling that fear amongst other criminals who would do the same leads to a very grounded interpretation of the character, which I think all other aspects of the story attempt to achieve. And while the art is again so fucking awesome, having a bat just fly in and he declare in one pane that he will dress up as a bat just seems a little out there for me. Sorry if that ruffled some feathers, but if I could just squeeze in one more thing, why does he get everything on like the very next page? I was really confused here, and I even looked back because the story takes place in a year one, so it has a lot of dates, and I looked, the night Bruce gets shot is March 11th. And then we see him in the bat suit April 6th, which I think is just way too short of a time period to organize all this stuff. I think it is mitigated to some degree because he doesn't have a huge bat cave or a bat plane, but it is still a suspension of disbelief that I was really annoyed I had to do in such a gritty tale. We get some more characterization of Harvey before we finally see Batman in action for the first time, and he's kind of mid. I say this in a purely positive way. I've really enjoyed all of the action thus far because not only is this Batman open to getting shot and generally beaten up, but we know he won't die. Instead, what's often at stake is preserving his golden rule, do not kill. And while I do wish they elaborated on that a bit more, the idea that no child should have to endure what he did, blah blah blah, I do think it's still done to pretty great effect here. So as Batman gains notoriety, the corrupt politicians and crime lords meet to discuss. And Batman bursts through, which is just one of the highlights of this entire issue. And specifically, I love how they use light on this page. I already spoke about fear as a theme, but it's so good here. And as word of Batman's message spreads, we cut to Harvey Dent and Gordon and Batman hiding underneath his desk. Now, I don't need everything explained. It's fine to leave some things as ambiguous, but I would say this made me more confused than wonder. And cool enough, Gordon just immediately suspects Bruce Wayne of being Batman, which I thought was really interesting. But before they get into that, there's this old lady that needs saving, and Batman saves her, but being a wanted criminal, the police show up, a chase ensues, and Batman gets shot. He flees into an abandoned building, but not taking any chances, the commissioner calls in Brandon, who I have just never heard of, but I just think it's funny because he's as significant of a character in the story as like Harvey Dent, and he basically blows this whole thing up and the issue ends. As we get into the halfway point, I wanted to talk a little bit about Batman Year One's legacy. Granted, again, I have not read any other comics. I haven't seen all the stuff, but instantly I knew that stuff like Batman Begins, Batman Forever, Gotham, The Batman, all of these have so many homages and take so much inspiration from this. I really think this story's great achievements are twofold. Number one, the fact that they created a compelling story with essentially no supervillains, not counting Catwoman, is pretty incredible. I don't really think that'll ever be replicated nowadays. People criticize like The Dark Knight for being a Joker movie first and a Batman movie second, but I think reading this does make me understand that perspective a little bit more. And I wouldn't say Batman's arc is particularly complex. For the length and the style, I think it's perfect, and I really don't think his normal origin story never really needs to be retreaded. This is pretty much the definitive version. And the second is that Batman and this comic, despite being 42 years old, really feels like the same character now. As of the editing of this video, I'm reading the very first Spider-Man comics, which yes, are a bit older for sure, but Peter Parker feels like a completely different person, which is ironic because I've been told that Batman literally is a different Batman from this one. If there are any other comics you think I should look back on with fresh eyes, please drop me a comment. Always looking for recommendations. The third issue opens up with Batman in flames when he uses his wits to hide in an electric door. I don't know, maybe this was just like a thing in the 80s. These fight scenes really last a long time too. There really is no level 1 goon in this story. Every enemy is a pretty sizable threat. But after this thrilling sequence, we get probably the worst part of the entire story. So, first of all, I thought Barbara Gordon was his daughter, not his wife, and I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say that the wife came first and the daughter second, but somebody is really weird for making that switch, let me tell you. Anyways, Gordon cheats on his wife, and I'm all for morally ambiguous characters, but this is just ridiculous. I mean, Gordon's wife is pregnant, so, like, extra levels of fucked, but this is eventually used as blackmail against him for, like, 3 seconds, and then he tells his wife, who has to go through all this shit, and I was just like, leave this man! I get that he's cleaning up the city, but he's consistently neglecting her, putting himself in purposely dangerous situations, being away at all hours of the night, and now he cheats on her. Like, I do not care for this character. This poor woman needs a divorce. I honestly don't know if this is some untapped cool story later, but it just kind of soured Gordon for me, and now that we have this idea of what Gotham is, he doesn't really have any more interesting things to do for the entire rest of the story. So now we're at the last issue, and it opens with, oh come on, I don't care about this. Harvey's secret is exposed and he's really stoned, I guess, so Barbara needs to call the commissioner and be like, yes, I know he's awful, no need to blackmail. She's like, you can fuck off now. So Gordon shifts his focus to finally question Bruce Wayne, and Bruce plays it up like he's like this bumbling nepo baby. I really love this little snippet. It was such a funny moment, so cute. 10 out of 10. So we cut to Falcone, and let me just say, I know he's called the Roman. I always thought that was just like he's Italian. They were trying to find a nickname, but no. This is the house of someone called the Roman, alright. Batman's there to spy, Catwoman's there to steal, hijinks ensue, and Batman is left without any answers. As Bruce figures out the plan, we cut back to Gordon, who gets a call on his Mickey Mouse phone. It's the commissioner, and he calls Gordon to come down to the station in the middle of the night, but right as he does, he sees someone go into the building, so he immediately turns around. Turns out, someone has his wife and daughter at gun and knife point respectively, and oh, Barbara, I am so sorry you have to go through this. You really don't deserve it. Gordon takes out the guys holding his wife, but the car with the kid escapes with Gordon in pursuit. Finally, it's revealed that one of the goons is Bruce, not in suit, and he joins the chase. Harvey shoots the tires, the car rams into the bridge, and all hell breaks loose. They fight, and Gordon Jr. gets dropped, only for Bruce to save him while Harvey takes care of the kidnapper. We get some panels about how Gotham's finally starting to get better, slowly but surely. Gordon takes over as commissioner, but I was kind of confused since Gordon has seen Bruce before, and he really doesn't question this at all. I hope it's expanded upon later, but I was definitely a bit underwhelmed. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it was a great starting point for me, but I do wish it was either a bit longer or, if they really wanted to keep 4 issues, a bit narrower in scope. Still, the art design, action, and world building are as good here as any other Batman media. As a result, I'm giving Batman Year 1 an 8 out of 10.